Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 1 of our 5-part Guilds of Ravnica limited set review. Today we're going to be talking about the Boros cards in particular, and what kind of utility each of these cards individually will have in your draft and sealed strategies. Now, in addition to Boros watermark cards, we're also going to talk about the white cards that do not have watermarks today. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to discuss the artifacts and lands that don't have watermarks. So this one's going to be a little longer than some of the subsequent parts. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel. You'll find our Patreon page down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon. And if you make any purchases once you go through that initial link, no matter what it is, we'll get a small percentage for the channel. Finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save some cash while you support us. But with that being said, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. Y'all make the channel what it is, and let's get into it. We're going to begin with the white cards that do not have watermarks first. Now, this is a rare, and rares and mythics, of course, aren't going to show up as much as the commons and uncommons. Many times, the commons and uncommons are really what make or break your deck. But we'll evaluate all the cards today, starting with this one, Bounty Agent. A 2/2 with Vigilance for 2, and it has another ability to boot. Now, the other ability isn't always going to come in handy. Granted, it has to be sitting across the table from an opponent that's playing a legendary permanent that's an artifact, creature, and enchantment. But when that happens, you'll be really happy to have this, and you don't have to just wait for that opportunity to slide it in, because this is still a very good 2-drop. The thing about 2-drops is you want to make sure you have enough of them in your limited decks. If you're lacking in the 2 and 3 spot, you're going to fall behind in limited games and sometimes never catch up. You want to make sure that is your thickest part of the curve. And Bounty Agent is going to accomplish that and also give you a lot of upside. So I like it for that reason. One thing you're going to see as we get a little more dedicated into Boros, especially for draft, you might have to make some decisions sometimes about playing a mentor creature or playing a creature that doesn't have mentor that might even be a little bit better. You might have to just go with the weaker mentor creature, because I really think that's how Boros is going to win. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, though. Candlelight Vigil. This one's okay. It's an aura. I'm not a big fan of auras that don't replace themselves or protect the creature or have some sort of trick to bring them back, typically, because I don't like to be 2-for-1s. Now, this is going to give the creature Vigilance and +3/+2 for 4. That's actually pretty significant size-wise, as long as the creature can get by with their damage. I'm not going to say never play this. But especially in Boros colors, as we're going to move forward and see in a few moments, I don't want to dilute my deck too much with things that are going to be situational. I want to make sure I am putting the aggression down on the table. This starts to feel a little too slow for what Boros is trying to do, even though this would enhance Mentor with the +3 power, right? So with that in mind, maybe I play this some of the time, depending on my deck build, especially in sealed. It might not be horrible for me, but when I play it, pick your spot. Don't play it into open mana. Play it when your opponent's tapped out or they don't have cards in their hand and you know you're going to be able to get across with a creature with evasion. If you can get that extra damage across and then the creature gets blown up and you get 2-for-1s, at least you got 3 more damage out of the deal. Almost makes it feel like it was worth spending the 4 mana. I will try to avoid this when I can, though. Citywide Bust. Okay, this one's a rare. You won't see it a lot, but board sweeps, even conditional ones like this one, I'm always going to play them when I have the opportunity. They're nice panic buttons to have if things aren't going your way. Now, granted, you could be sitting across from someone playing a lot of Selesnya tokens or something like that, and this won't feel so great. If that's the case, maybe you board it out, but I wouldn't hesitate to main deck this thing. When you're ahead, sometimes this is an awkward draw because you're not going to pull the trigger on it, and it could slow you down slightly, but when you're behind, you're going to be really happy that this is in your deck. I'd rather not need it and just have it than need it and not have it. So I'm always going to run these and be pretty happy with them. It's interesting, too, because in Boros, if you do start to fall behind, especially a little bit later in the game, and your smaller creatures are not connecting, you can't get your mentor to work, this is going to give you maybe a second chance to take off and do some damage. I do like that. In Selesnya builds, you might be the one with a small token, so this might not impact you as much as your opponent. Overall, just a really solid card. Color the Culprit. This is a fine common removal spell. You might even be able to pick it up in a draft slightly later in a pack. This is nice because it's a fallback removal spell. It's not the best removal spell you're going to find in the set by any means, but it's still going to get the job done a percentage of the time. Now, it can't hit small toughness creatures, anything, of course, below 4. That could be a little bit annoying. It does cost 4. It's not super cheap either, but it is instant pinpoint removal that will come in handy at some point. Now, I don't want to run 3 or 4 of these and call it a day and say that's my removal suite because it's a little too narrow. There's going to be other cards that could complement this as removal that you'll want in your deck alongside it. Crush Contraband. This is a sideboard card for me in Limited. If I come up against a problematic artifact or enchantment, I'll side it in and be happy. I don't want to main deck this necessarily in this particular environment. Dawn of Hope. Okay. So this is good even if you're not like on the Selesnya plan. Like you look at this and you think, well, this would make sense with Selesnya. They're making lots of tokens. This is a very cheap enchantment. Granted, it's rare. You won't see it all the time. But if I get it, I'm going to try to play this thing. It's going to be a bomb for you. You got to look at it this way. Let's pretend I have no other token creation at all in my deck. I play this for 2, not a huge startup cost. If I don't have any ways to gain life, then okay, maybe initially I'm not going to be able to use the card draw ability. But at some point, that mana sink is going to become relevant. Creating 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink for 4 mana, and it doesn't tap or anything, you can just keep doing that as long as you have mana. That will be phenomenal. That's going to take you beyond board stalls. And remember, they have lifelink, so later on, that could mean if they get in combat, that you could be able to trigger the card draw ability as well if you have the mana. That's amazing. This card could help you run away with a game. It doesn't matter if you're Boros, Selesnya, or you're just splashing this in another guild. You're going to love this. Demotion. You might look at this and say, well, this doesn't stop creatures from attacking me. Is it all that good? I don't think it's bad, actually. It's just 1 mana. It's really cheap, and this is perfect for Boros. They want to keep pressing. They want to be able to attack and trigger their mentor. And at any time you can't do that anymore, you're in trouble. So you want to create as many opportunities as you can to attack in with all your mentor creatures as much as possible. This is going to help you. Now, you have to be careful, too. You don't want to dilute your strategy by not putting enough mentor creatures and too many effects like this in there. So definitely use this in moderation, but if you have a 1-of in your deck or something like that, I think it will be just fine for you. Outside of Boros, it's still a good card. Like, granted, I know it doesn't necessarily do everything you might want it to do, but it does still leave lines of attack open and combat open for you. It's going to be good in Selesnya, or maybe even if you're splashing white in another deck, too. Also, this does shut off activated abilities. That can be very relevant with cards like Guild Mages out there. Divine Visitation. Alright, this one's a mythic, and this is a little unusual because it's not very good if you don't have another way to create tokens. There's a lot of ways in white to create tokens, which could be in your Boros build, but especially your Selesnya build. If you have them, and you happen to stumble upon this card in your sealed pool or in a draft, then you know what? Take it, it's going to be good for you. But you have to have enough ways to actually create tokens. If you don't, skip this. 5 mana, if it's only going to maybe interact with 1 card, that's not enough. If it's going to interact with maybe 3 cards, 4 cards, now we're talking. So just consider the rest of your pool before you just jump in and play this. It might be a difficult card to pass in a draft, but there are times where it probably is appropriate to pass it. So do consider that. But I think for the most part, you're going to have at least something that will interact with it. Most of the time, you'll be able to play it. If you don't, well, skip it. Gird for Battle. I'm not a huge fan of this one. If it was an instant, I could use it as a combat trick. Maybe I'd be a little more interested. Here's what you should do with it, though. I'm not going to say it's unplayable. Some builds, especially in sealed, you may want it. Boros Mentor creatures. It's going to interact well there because you want them to be a little bit bigger from time to time. You can give 2 of your creatures +1/+1 counters. So now they have better lines of attack, which means more mentor triggers. And because they're larger, they can impact more creatures with a mentor. Yeah, it makes sense there. Here's what you have to be careful of, though. Especially in a draft environment where you could really pick up maybe a good number of mentor creatures. You don't want to dilute your deck. I alluded to this earlier. We're going to talk more about it as the video goes on. You got some tough decisions to make because if you don't go all in on mentor, I think Boros could be a little bit weak. That's why a lot of people early on are saying that they don't know if that's going to be that good of a guild in Limited. They don't have necessarily a whole bunch of big cards, but it's all the little cards working together. But if you don't go all in on that mentor, especially in draft, you're going to be in trouble. So if you start diluting your deck a little bit with something like this, and then another card here, a creature that's not a mentor creature that you like over here, all of a sudden the mentor gets diluted to the point where you're not going to be able to do a whole lot against a lot of these other builds. That's my biggest fear. Now, sealed, you have more flexibility. That's why I think you might play it there and actually feel a little better with the card from time to time. But just be careful. Make sure you're not using this in lieu of another strong mentor creature or even a mediocre mentor creature sometimes. Hasda Marshal. This one's a little unusual. It kind of has the battalion effect, which is interesting. It can make a token, which we have seen could interact with some other cards. Here's where I think I like this card. Selesnya, if I have Convoke spells. play this on turn 1 or turn 2, and it's going to help you power out the Convoke spell. And then later on, if you happen to make the token or find value here, wonderful. This doesn't have haste. It doesn't have mentor. Does not feel all that good to me in a Boros build because, again, I don't want to dilute my creatures with creatures that don't have mentor unless the creature is really, really good. I feel like even in sealed, I'm going to skip this one most of the time unless I have that very specific plan with Selesnya. Healer's Hawk, another card like the last one, only costs 1. Again, it can turn on the Convoke. This one's a little better, though, with Mentor. Again, be careful not to dilute too much, but a 1/1 attacks in. If a Mentor creature attacks with it that's larger power-wise, now it's a 2/2 flying lifelink. Maybe you can get it up to 3/3. Feels like the value could be there for you, definitely. Lifelink is important for Boros as well, even though you kind of think of it maybe more as a Selesnya thing. But Boros is going to be attacking a lot, leaving themselves open to crackback sometimes. So you want to make sure you're going to be able to win races. Lifelink really helps there. Hunted Witness, not a big fan of this one, even in sealed. Again, Convoke spells, if I have those in my deck, this is a nice card to throw out there. It's persistent too, and it could help me power out Convoke early and later, even though this card could die. I get the token to replace it. That's kind of nice. But again, I'm not playing this in a Boros build if I can help it. It's just not strong enough there. Inspiring Unicorn. All right, now this is what I'm looking for. It's not a mentor creature, but this is going to be phenomenal for you in Boros because it enables mentor. It's going to be phenomenal for you in Selesnya because you're going wide. You'll have these little lifelink tokens and such, and bolstering those will be awesome for you too. This is a 2/2 for 4. Okay, that feels a little shaky, but it does attack in as a 3/3 because the ability does impact itself as well. But imagine all the power toughness that will be increased on attacks as you play. Of course, it's going to interact extremely well with Mentor, and it's going to keep the Boros deck attacking into the middle and maybe even later portion of the game, and that's what it needs. I think your biggest fear with Boros is it's going to fizzle out at some point. You need to get the small creatures down early. They need to grow ahead of your opponent's curve. That's the whole idea here. This card will help keep that going. In draft, this is a high pick uncommon, maybe even first pickable in many packs. Especially Pack 2 or Pack 3 if you're already in Boros or Selesnya. Intrusive Pack Beast. I actually like this one, maybe more so for Boros than Selesnya. A 3/3 with Vigilance, but here's what I enjoy about this. It's going to enter the battlefield and tap up to 2 target creatures your opponents control. This doesn't have Mentor on its own, but again, it's creating a situation where your Mentor creatures can keep going deeper into the game and keep attacking. That's what you need to have happen. This is a nice higher end of the curve for the Boros deck for sure. It's a common. You don't want more than maybe one of these in your deck. Like, don't get crazy. You'll be able to pick it up most likely at the end of a draft pack, so you don't have to prioritize it, but it'll be good for you. It's going to do work in sealed as well as draft. Luminous Bonds. This one's a reprint, so you kind of know what this does already. Perfect, again, as white removal no matter what your plan is. Boros, Selesnya, you can splash this in another deck that's not even running white. It's just going to be solid removal for you. A little annoying that it doesn't deal with abilities because you do have like guild mages and stuff that are quite good, but it's going to deal with a lot of problems that will come up. Righteous Blow. This is another reprint. This is another just solid removal card, this time on the lower end of the curve, and it's especially good for Boros because you got to keep attacking. You got to keep going. You can't let a little 2/2 stop you early in the game. You need ways around it. You're going to want to run 1, maybe even 2 of these in a deck sometimes. Rock Charger. You know, we see one of these type of cards that feels like in every set right now. They're always good. They're always going to do work for you. I think this is especially good in this set, and that's probably why this particular one is an uncommon and not a common. It's going to be good with Selesnya because you're going to build into some larger green creatures at some point, and they might not have evasion or tramples, so this will help get their damage across. Boros, this is another way to just lift up one of your creatures and have it keep getting in there, keep attacking with Mentor. This can be a good Mentor target as well, making it larger as a flyer. Another card that's going to be a strong support card for that guild. Skyline Scout. This one is not too exciting. Here's the deal. I can pay to give it flying. It's a 2/1 for 2. That's a little underwhelming. I have to pay to give it flying when it attacks. Well, that might be okay because, again, Boros needs something to just keep everything rolling. Evasion will help. But this is one of those cards I'm going to question. Am I diluting what I'm doing with Mentor to put this in there? I don't want to do that. I might pick a Mentor card that is actually worse than this just to keep the Mentor rolling because this isn't doing anything that's super phenomenal. This will be a little better in sealed and definitely more playable there. But I do think no matter what your strategy is, many times this won't make your cut. Sometimes in sealed, you might be desperate for 2 drops. This is a 2-drop that will be serviceable though. Sworn Companions. This is another way to continue to go wide, especially in Selesnya. I think that's going to be more important than in Boros. And again, you're not going to play this in Boros. You're going to want an actual mentor creature in the spot if you can help it. One thing I would warn you, though, too, if this was an instant, I'd be a little more on board with this particular card. Again, it could be like a combat trick. But 3 mana for 2/2 power toughness, even though it does have lifelink, it's a little underwhelming. Like, it just feels a little light on economy. If I can avoid this card, I'm going to try to play something else. It's not going to be horrible, though, for you in Sealed if you need to go wide. Take Heart, cheap combat trick. I like it a lot, especially for Boros, where you need to attack. This does 2 things Boros wants to do. You can continue attacking in with this combat trick in your back pocket, so if your opponent does fall for it and they block something, you're able to eat it and then also still trigger all the stuff you would have triggered. Also, you gain life for each of your attacking creatures. If you're in a race, which many times Boros might be, then that's going to help you there too. Only 1 mana because of the economy. I'll play one of these in my decks for Sealed or Draft and be pretty happy with it. Another card you'll probably be able to pick up later in a draft pack. 10th District Guard. 2/2s for 2, always happy to play them, especially if they have upside. Very serviceable, especially in Sealed. This does something Boros wants to do by increasing toughness on one creature, even if it is just for the turn. It could, again, create a line of attack that wasn't there before. However, am I going to play this over a mentor creature if I can help it? No, but also don't skimp on your 2-drop when you're forming your curve. If you need to play this, you need to play it. All right, let's move into the actual Boros watermark cards. Doesn't mean you can only play those in Boros. They're still sometimes good with Selesnya or other builds even. Well, let's start with Blade Instructor. This is a mentor card. It's at common, so you're going to be able to find these. You'll grab them in your seal pool. You'll be able to find these in draft. And if you're all in on the Boros plan, this will be good for you. Not a big fan of these stats. 3/1 for 3, but it has mentor. And like I've been saying all along, you need to go all in on mentor. I can't say that enough. If you want to do this, you got to be in for all of the good and the bad. This is one of those cards in a draft you might even pick over a better creature because you need the mentor abilities here. Light of the Legion. All right, here's the payoff rare for you. If you're lucky to get it, this could be the card that rewards you for going down this path, or it could be the card that starts you down the path. It's great in Boros. It's also good with Selesnya. So even though it's a little higher curve, that's fine and limited. 6 is not unreasonable at all. 5/5 with flying. It's got evasion. It's got a high power mentor ability. That's awesome. And when it dies, all your white creatures get +1/+1 counters on them. Fantastic for other mentor creatures. So hopefully you put this down, get some damage across with it. And then when it does die and your opponent's going to have to deal with it, your smaller things get bigger. It's going to help you just keep being aggressive. The key to Boros, keep being aggressive. So Selesnya, though, another good place to have it. It's still a solid creature. When it dies, those little tokens get a little bigger and sometimes could eventually overwhelm the opponent. Love this card a lot. You won't see it a ton at rare, but it's great. Parhelion Patrol. You know what? 2/3, Flying Vigilance 4, even without Mentor. This is a pretty good limited card, especially in Sealed. But the key here, again, is Mentor. A Mentor creature with evasion. The power's a little lower this time for 2, but that's okay. You only paid 4 for it. Still going to do work for you. Especially if you can mentor this or make it a little bit bigger first and then attack in with it. If it's a 3/4 and it can mentor a 2/2 to become a 3/3, that actually feels pretty good. Other than that, on its own, it can only make a 1/1 like a 2/2. Not as exciting or probably as useful. But again, that's not the point. It's not all about one card here. It's about your chain and how you can kind of make the other cards better with what's around it. Sunhome Stalwart. Okay. Boros fans, you probably wish this one was a common, but it's an uncommon. It's a 2/2 for 2 with tons of upside. First strike and mentor. That is amazing. The first strike's going to help it keep attacking. The fact that it can mentor, again, small creatures, maybe mentoring a 1/1 to a 2/2 is not going to be hyper relevant a lot of the time. But if you can get this to be a 3/3, it becomes much, much better. So again, better in conjunction with other mentor cards, but still very playable on its own. Let's look at some red cards that have the watermark. Barging Sergeant. All right, 4/2 haste for 5. Don't love those stats, but guess what it's got? Mentor. This is a card I normally would never play, probably, because it has Mentor and also pretty high power. Guess what? I'm going to play it. I maybe don't want more than one of these in my deck, but I'm going to end up playing it this time around. Goblin Banneret. Okay. This one has Mentor. It is a 1/1, so if you are looking for a small creature to buff a little bit, here is one of them. What's interesting about this one is you can pay mana to increase its power, so it can mentor larger things. And it doesn't pump toughness, so it is going to be fragile in that regard. And also, it doesn't have haste or anything like that. That's a little disappointing. It's not going to be amazing for you, but again, with Mentor, it will be very playable, especially with that pump effect. Legion War Boss, another Mentor card, so you know how I feel about it. This one's a rare. You won't see it as much. Remember this. It's a 2/2 for 3. Yes, at the beginning of combat on your turn, it creates a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token gains haste until end of turn and attacks this combat if able. So the token has to attack. The token does not have Mentor. This has Mentor. However, if you're behind, this is not going to help you very much. You're just making this creature that creates 1/1s that run into a large creature and die. Okay, so it's not the magic card that's going to save you. No pun intended. But it's not bad. Again, because it has Mentor, it's going to fit into the machine. It's a cog in the machine, so you're going to play it. You'll be happy with it. It's a rare. You won't see it all the time, but a very playable Boros card. Wojciech, Bodyguard. All right, guess what this has? It's Mentor, and it's a common. This is actually a pretty decent one. They give you the drawback that it can attack or block alone. If it's attacking or blocking alone and you're in the Boros build, you already lost. So that's not much of a drawback. You've already lost that game. So if you play this on turn 3, the whole idea here is aggression, aggression, aggression. Keep attacking with Mentor. 3 power is pretty significant. And yes, it's always going to be attacking and blocking with somebody, or else it's already too late for you. Okay, let's move into those gold cards with Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice. Just a good mythic, as it should be, right? It's mythic, and you're not going to see this a lot. But when you do, yeah, play it. And it doesn't have to be in a Boros build. You could splash colors to play this. It's just a good creature. Now, yes, in Boros, it's awesome. It has Mentor. It has Flying. We like those things. Also, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1 target creature you control. That creature gets +2/+0, gains Trample if it's red, Vigilance if it's white. Guess what? It can target itself. So even if you don't have any other creatures on the battlefield, you can just make this a 4 or 5 and attack on in. And it has Vigilance and Trample. Yeah, it sure doesn't feel bad to me for a flyer for just 4 mana, right? Wow. So this is doing a ton. Lots of economy behind it. Better with other Mentor cards in Boros, sure. But always good. Just always good. Boros Challenger. All right, this one is another Mentor creature. Only costs 2. And this time you're getting a 2/3 for 2. So ignore everything else for a minute. It is 2 different colors, granted. Maybe it's more of a turn 3 play, sometimes on a turn 2 play. But a 2/3 for 2. You know I'm going to like this card. So you throw the Mentor on and you throw the pump ability on too. Yeah, pretty good card for the Boros builds and just generally a good 2-drop. Chance for Glory. All right, it's a mythic. You're not going to see it much, but do you play it when you see it? I think sometimes you do. Here's where I like it. The Boros build wants to be aggressive and wants to keep attacking. You don't want to dilute your deck too much, like I said, so don't get crazy. If this shows up, obviously you're not going to get more than 1 copy, but don't throw this into a deck if you don't have enough creatures to begin with and you have other things in there. You have to make a cut outside of the creature area of your deck. But if you decide to go for it, sometimes it'll pay off. Now, you don't want to be suckered into a situation where you go to play this, then your opponent, before it resolves, can get rid of a major creature or something like that. There will be gotcha moments. So make sure you play it maybe when you know your opponent's on the ropes and maybe they're tapped out or don't have cards or what have you. That's when it's going to be best. And aside from that, once it comes into play, yes, all your creatures are indestructible now for the duration of the game. That's good. So it does create better lines of attack, especially with Mentor. And you do have to finish off your opponent in the next couple turns, or else you're not going to win. So do the math right. Don't let your opponent surprise you. Play it at the right time, and you might be able to win. If you're behind, it's not great, obviously, because usually Time Walk sometimes could help catch you up, but in this case it won't because you don't have time after that. So that's a little awkward. I do like that this is an instant because there will be the rare occasion where the opponent will attack in, not accounting for this. You go ahead and play this at instant speed. The indestructible your creatures have might screw up the combat math just enough now that you might be able to crack back and win. I'm a gambler. I'm going to run this thing in a Boros build and probably like it. I think it could be good in Selesnya build, splashing black as well, because again, they're going wide and a couple attacks could put away a game. I do like that. But again, it is a big risk. It's not for every deck for sure. Deafening Clarion, good panic button that actually has another use if you don't need to use it as a panic button. So I do like that. If I'm falling behind and I'm in Boros and I stumble and my opponent's got their stuff out before I get my stuff out, and I just can't attack in now. While I play this, and it's kind of a reset button. Now hopefully I can play my mentor creatures and actually get some damage across if I failed the first time. Granted, once the game goes on too long, your opponent might have larger creatures, and this will become worse. If I'm already winning, then okay, I can gain some life instead. The card's not a dead card. I like that a lot too. I also like that you can do both. That's pretty cool for 3 mana. So yeah, I'm always going to play this if I'm in these colors. Again, another card that I might even consider splashing if I'm not in Boros, but I'm in one of those colors. Garrison Sergeant. All right, this one I don't like, unless I'm all in on the gate plant. I haven't talked much about that, but later in the video, we'll get into it a little bit more. But one strategy, especially for draft, is just draft a bunch of guild gates and play the cards that get better with guild gates. Well, this is one of those cards. For Boros, this is not very good because it's a 3/3 for 5. And yes, if you control a gate, you get double strike. Now, the thing with the Boros deck is, if you control a gate, that means you're running a card that comes into play tapped in your mana base. And even though color fixing is awesome, if you're truly in a Boros deck without a 3rd or 4th color, I don't know if you want to do that. Just simply because Boros needs to be fast. They can't slow down for anything or they're going to be in trouble. So you're not going to just put a Boros Guild Gate in here because you got this guy. That's not going to be good enough. And if this comes into play as a 5 casting cost 3/3, you're not going to have a good day. Bottom line. So you want to make sure you have enough gates that this will be consistent. And that probably means you're not actually in a Boros build. You're in maybe a 5-color, 4-color build or something like that. That's where you play this card. Other than that, skip it. You'll find better things. Hammer Dropper. All right, you know what I'm going to say here. It has Mentor, so I'm going to consider it. But this time, this doesn't have haste, and it's a 5/2 for 4. Very, very fragile. But because it's a high-power Mentor creature, it is also very, very playable. Don't go crazy. You don't want to just load up the 4 spot of your curve with these things, but 1 will be fine. Justice Strike. Good removal spell here. Instant speed only costs 2. Not going to take care of everything, but it's going to take care of most things. You're going to play this in Boros. You might even splash to play this. It's that good. Legion Guild Mage. Love Guild Mages. Many times in drafts, they are high, maybe even first picks out of packs. Very strong. This one's perfect for Boros. 2/2 for 2, so you know I like it. But there's more than that. The white and 2 ability, tapping down a creature, continues, hopefully, for you to be able to make profitable attacks with your mentor creatures. That's huge. And if everything does get gummed up, if you can't get by, especially later in the game, you reach a point where the opponent catches up and they stabilize and you can't get your creatures by, you can't attack, well, this puts them on a clock. Red and 5, 3 damage to opponent. That's going to eventually end the game too if they don't have an answer. So this is a great backup for the later game win. I love it. Knight Legionary. This one's a reprint. Now, you might have played with this card in the past, and it's okay. Like, I've played with it before and been underwhelmed. It didn't quite do as much as I wanted it to do. But with Mentor, I think it gets a lot better. 2/2 flying haste, as long as you have maybe a 3/3 Mentor creature here or there. This could attack in as a 3/3 the turn it comes into play. All of a sudden, it feels a little bit better, right? It doesn't have Mentor, so be careful. Don't dilute too much. You don't want to grab like 4 of these and think you're playing the Boros Mentor deck. You're going to be playing these 2/2s that are super fragile that never get larger. That's not good. But if you have 1 of these in your deck and all other Mentor creatures, this will be fine. Swathcutter Giant. This is okay if you need something higher end of the curve. It's not super exciting though. 5/5 Vigilance for 6. Okay, it's beefier than many of the cards we've been seeing today, and sometimes you just need that, especially in sealed. And the ability is good against certain builds like Selesnya. You can knock out a lot of tokens, or maybe just make some better attack lines if you bring down the toughness by 1 point of the opponent's creatures for a turn. But ultimately, I don't want to play this over maybe even a smaller Mentor creature. Again, it's all about Mentor here for me today. Switchblade Vindicator. Now, this is similar to the card we just talked about a moment ago. It's a good card with the Mentor abilities because it's going to get larger quickly. Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample. If you can make this a 2/2, then a 3/3, even a 4/4, it gets out of hand pretty quick, right? So that's kind of awesome, but don't go overboard. Now, this one's a rare, so you won't see it all that often. You won't see more than 1 copy, but don't play 1 of these, 3 of the Sky Knights, another creature that doesn't have Mentor like the big giant we just saw, and expect your Boros deck to be pretty good, especially in draft. It's not going to be. Now, sealed, you do have more wiggle room, so yeah, you can water down the Mentor a little bit, but just be careful. Try to use it as much as you can, and if it's not there, just move on to a different guild. Hopefully you have something better in other colors, right? But yes, this is very playable. Just be careful. Tajik Legion's Edge. Here's a card you don't have to be careful with. It is a rare. You're not going to see a lot of it, but play it, play it, play it. I can't emphasize that enough. This card is a bomb. 3/2 haste for 3. It has Mentor. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. So now your opponents, if they are maybe in Ride or something like that, and they have to now get rid of this before they can get rid of your other stuff, that's pretty potent. Now, there's other removal spells out there, obviously, but making the opponent focus on this first sometimes can be annoying. You can give it first strike, so that's going to help the line of attacks better. I have nothing bad to say about this thing. It is awesome. True Fire Captain. This has Mentor. It's a little stricter on colors, not a card you're going to splash if you're not in Boros, probably. But yeah, 4/3 Mentor, and when this is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. A little reminiscent of Boros Reckoner, however, not as good. The casting cost is stricter, obviously. And also, it can't hit any target, it only hits the player. But I don't hate that in this example, because again, later in the game, if your Boros starts to fizzle out, things don't go your way, you're going to need to find other ways to get maybe those last few points of damage across. And this could put your opponent in a catch-22. Attack with this. If they block it, they're taking damage. If they don't block it, they're taking damage. So this could be a potential finisher. You probably don't want to get crazy with this card, again, because of the color requirements and the 4 mana. But a copy of this in a sealed or draft deck I think will be good. Freshfaced Recruits. I'm not sad that this doesn't have first strike when blocking, because Boros doesn't want to block. Boros wants to attack. So this hybrid card is actually okay to run, as long as you have a lot of Mentor creatures. But again, I'm going to give you that same warning one more time. Don't dilute too much. One of these is going to be fine in conjunction with some other creatures that don't have Mentor that are good, but don't go overboard with that. Make sure you stay focused and keep the eye on the Mentor as much as you can. And with that being said, this will be fine, better in sealed than draft probably. Playable in other decks too, like Selesnya. If you're just trying to go wide, it's a cheap creature for Convoke, so it could see a home outside of Boros as well. Here's a split card, Integrity, Intervention. High pick draft uncommon here. This is going to be awesome when you get your hands on it. The first side is a cheap combat trick. We already talked about how good that could be with Boros. The other side is an expensive Lightning Helix. We already know how good that card is, right? Perfect, especially in the Boros build, because the gain life could be consequential. So ultimately, yeah, if you can play this, play it. It's going to be optimal removal for you in this build. And splashable in other decks as well. Selesnya decks can splash some red for this and be really happy with it, for example. Here's another one, Response and Resurgence. The response is great because, again, it's going to help you keep attacking. It's not very expensive. Keep getting in the red zone when they block it. Boom, response. Resurgence is fantastic for the later portion of the game where you might be in a situation where you're starting to run out of gas. The Resurgence is going to give you an extra push now with first strike and vigilance for all your creatures to end a turn and a second combat phase that could close out a game. Selesnya is going to like this too, because first off, the response is still great for them. It's an awesome card generally, and they have a similar strategy. They're trying to overwhelm just in a different way. So the Resurgence will come in handy if they're splashing red, perhaps. So overall, it's a rare. You're not going to see it a lot, but when you do see it, it will be good in those builds. All right, we'll look at the artifact with the watermark first. Then we'll look at some other random artifacts today so we get those out of the way. But Boros Lockets. First off, let's talk about the Lockets in general. I love them. I think they're awesome for limited color fixing. You know where they're going to really excel? When you need to go 3-4 colors, which will happen in sealed, and it will even happen in draft probably quite a bit. I think that is the main reason they're here, but what's nice about them is they allow you to splash those other colors that you need. You also can ramp a little bit, and when you don't need them anymore, maybe you played that one card that's in that color or what have you, then I can just pay the 4, sack it, it replaces itself, and I go a card deeper into the library. That's actually really sweet. So I love this cycle generally. I like it more, especially when we're talking Boros, if I'm splashing though. I don't see myself using Boros Locket in the Boros deck. Here's why. Even though color fixing, even in a 2-color deck, is never a bad thing, a little ramp isn't always a bad thing either, but Boros isn't trying to go super big, and they are trying to stay aggressive, right? You don't want to slow yourself down with this. Now, I would consider maybe playing a Locket in a Boros deck if I was going to splash another color. I might use the Is It Locket to play a few blue tempo cards, for example. So that's the way I would think about this. If you cannot use these in a Boros deck, don't, but sometimes you'll need to. They just probably won't be on color for you. We'll move on to the lands that have watermarks. Boros Guild Gates. All right, similar warning here. I love guild gates. Obviously, I talked about you can draft the guild gates if you want and kind of go with that strategy. There is a strategy in there to do that. Or maybe you get a lot of the payoffs in your sealed pool too. But if not, you use these typically to fix color. Try to add consistency to your deck. Many 2-color decks, I'm happy to run the guild gate that's on color. Usually most of the time, actually. I like that consistency, even if it slows me down a little bit. Most likely, though, in Boros, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the risk that I'm going to be a little less consistent to keep the speed up. That's what that deck's going to be all about. Again, I might be splashing outside of the Boros colors. Then I'm bringing in the guild gate that's more relevant there. But just Boros guild gate in a 2-color deck, not going to happen. It needs to be fast. Sacred Foundry. Of course, shock lands are going to be good for fixing and consistency, and they won't slow you down at the cost of 2 life. So, you know what, Boros, as long as I'm not up against a hyper-aggressive build, yeah, I'll play this and be fine with it. I might actually side it out if I'm in a mirror matchup or someone's maybe playing Izzet with a lot of burn, because I don't want to help them along. But for the most part, this will be fine for you and will add consistency without slowing you down. Aside from this example, shock lands will be awesome for you. Another way to fix color in Limited. Okay, that does it for the watermark cards, but since it's the first day, let's get the artifacts and the lands that don't have watermarks out of the way, and we're going to look at Chamber Sentry first. You know, this is a good limited card. It's a rare, so again, it's not going to show up a lot, but it's better if you have a lot of colors. If you're going 3, 4, 5 colors, maybe you're drafting all the guild gates, it gets a lot stronger, obviously. But even if you're not, it's a nice on-curve creature. What if you just played this on turn 2 for 2 different color mana? You got a 2/2 for 2 with upside. Nothing wrong with that. You know I'm on board. It's going to be just fine for you in most builds. Maybe, like I've been saying all day today, Boros is the one build that's a little different that I might not want to slow down for. I might prefer a mentor creature or something like that, but for the most part, it's good. If I am drafting all the gates, it gets a lot better and could be a good pickup that other people may pass in a draft. Chromatic Lancer, great reprint. I know the Commander players were happy to see this. It actually works well with the previous card we saw, although they're both rares. That won't happen too often. So where do you play this in Limited? If you need a mana rock that's going to fix your colors, this is going to do it in a really big way. That's why you play it. It's going to be at its best if you're splashing a 3rd or 4th color. However, if you're going deep and you're trying to make a 4 or 5 color thing work, maybe you had a really bad sealed pool and you're just trying to do good stuff, or your draft didn't go so well, then this could be very welcome. But again, it's going to be most efficient when you're just trying to splash a color or 2. Gatekeeper Gargoyle. Okay, I'm not going to say you never play this without gates because I've been in those sealed pools where I'm just like, I need a flyer. What do I have here? Oh, okay. 6 casting cost 3/3 flyer? Yikes, I guess so. But hopefully that won't be your case. And if it's not, then don't play this. Play something better. But if you have gates, it starts to feel a lot better. Maybe 3 or 4 gates minimally. I'm interested. Like a 4/4 flyer for 6 is like, okay, not great. But definitely a 5/5 for 6, I'm starting to feel the value now. Like, okay, that's actually a pretty good value card. So if I have a lot of gates, it becomes better, obviously. So the more I'm in that plan, the better this is. Glaive of the Guild Pact. Here's another card that's going to reward you for playing gates. Do I ever play this without gates? Probably not. I mean, 2 casting cost, 3 to equip isn't great economy. Maybe sealed Boros, but for the most part, I think I want to have some gates like the previous card. Rampagey Monument. This is not bad in Limited. The way I look at it, imagine this is a 3/3 trample for 4, and the fact that it's outside of colors is kind of nice in this set because sometimes you might just need some color relief, especially in sealed. So if you're having trouble really chaining something together, this is still a solid creature. That's pretty cool. And as you play multicolor spells, it gets larger. Maybe you're attacking it with a 5/5 trample by the time you get back to your next combat phase. So that actually feels pretty decent, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, as long as you keep drawing multicolor spells that you can play, they could be in trouble. Like, they do have to find something to stop this if it gets out of hand. Silent Dart. This definitely feels like a Demir card, of course, but it does fit into anything, and it's good removal if you don't have any other options. Sometimes it will telegraph itself. That could be a little awkward. However, it just costs 1 to put out there. And it's going to cost you 4 to activate, 3 damage to target creature. It doesn't go to the face, can't hit planeswalkers, unfortunately. But sometimes, if you don't have any better removal, it will be good enough. It's just nice, again, that it fits into any deck without any color requirement here. Wand of Vertebrae. Alright, this is good for Golgari, maybe for Izzet with Jumpstart. These are the decks where you're trying to get value and find plays out of your graveyard, and hopefully, by using this, it's almost like drawing a card sometimes. If you mill a Jumpstart card, then it's like you drew it because you can play it even if you can only play it once instead of twice, right? Or if you have undergrowth cards in your hand that you want to get better, you try to hit a creature. That's the idea here. It's also nice, too, as a backup in Dimir. Let's say you start surveilling a little too wildly early on in the game, and the game goes long, and you're afraid you're going to get decked. Well, this does take your best cards in your graveyard and put them back into your library for some big late-game plays. That could be pretty decent, too, for 1 mana. If I'm not all in on those type of plans, though, then I would skip it. Gateway Plaza, as we move into the lands that don't have any watermarks. Great for color fixing if you need that. Many times, like I said, you will in both sealed and draft, so it's going to be very welcome. It slows you down a lot, though. When you play it, it comes into play tapped, and you have to tap one of your other lands or get another mana from somewhere. So that's not going to feel awesome, but if you need it, you need it. Guildmage's Forum. This one is a little different. It's a rare. It won't show up a whole ton. It doesn't come into play tapped, so I do like that. It doesn't slow you down, although it does slow you down on color, which could be very relevant. But it's also a filter land, so yes, that's a little slower. You're going to pay a mana and tap, so you're tapping 2 lands instead of 1 to get the 1 mana out of it, but it does fix color. And if that mana is spent on a multicolored creature spell, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So you can almost look at it in some circumstances as not only fixing color, but sometimes I just have extra mana, so I'm spending an extra mana when I cast the creature to get the +1/+1 counter. That's not horrible either for what guild, everybody? Boros, right? Boros would actually like that. It doesn't slow them down, and it makes their stuff maybe bigger, which will be perfect with Mentor. If I have enough multicolor creatures. Yeah, like it's perfect there. This is one of the lands that I would definitely consider playing if I got my hands on it and I was in Boros. Again, it could be good in other places too, though the color fixing element will be very strong in a number of decks. Alright, we made it. That's the Boros Guild. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's not about the individual cards in Boros, it's about the machine. You have to build the machine. If you can't build the machine, go do something else, because this could be very, very shaky if that's the case. I do like it a lot, though, and I think when it comes together, it actually will be very powerful. So look at your seal pool when you get to the pre-release. If you feel like you can make a powerful machine out of these, go for it. If not, maybe you have better options. We'll continue the series as we move through the week. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.